be made available on the website. So you can find the slide deck later. So thank you for registering for this webinar. This is the first webinar for the NINDS Ultra-Rare Gene Therapy Program. My name is Chris Boshoff. I'm at the Division of Translational Research at NINDS. I think the plan for today's webinar is really just to give you a very broad overview of the urgent program, aspects such as entry requirements, the scope, some of the funding mechanisms that we have right now, some of the funding mechanisms that we hope will be available sometime next year. So we'll touch base a little bit on that. But the idea is really to point you to where to find more information, and then most importantly, how to contact us. Should you think that this is something of interest to you, and you would like to speak to us directly. So we can get started. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the ultra-rare gene therapy network at a very high level. The urgent program was really designed to support the development of state-of-the-art gene-based and transcript-directed therapies for ultra-rare neurological diseases, and I should add neuromuscular diseases as well. Some of the key aspects of the network is that it is designed to be a phased program with multiple entry points. At the moment, we have 2 entry points. A third one is coming along later next year, and I will explain a little bit more about that later. Another aspect is also that in addition to funding, we also want to make contract resources available to successful applicants to advance their gene-based therapy from a late-stage non-clinical development into first-in-human clinical testing. And we hope to accelerate the development that, typically projects are expected to be at the stage where they can take 2, maybe 3, up to maximum of 3 years to get to the IND stage, and then after that, be ready for first-in-human clinical trial testing. So if you look at the right-hand side of this slide, it kind of gives a very high-level view of the thinking that guided us in the design of this network. On the left hand, the diagnosis. Now, patients are diagnosed at various times, stages of their life, and then many times these patient populations have to try to advance a therapy pretty much on their own steam, to the point where they can have a proof of concept to show that there is a reason to believe that they have a therapy in hand. And this is where I think the network would come in, is where we can help these ultra-rare patient populations to enter into a planning stage where we can make subject matter experts available to these patients to plan what is really needed to get their therapy from where they are now to let's say an IND, and that involves a lot of moving parts, regulatory aspects, manufacturing, animal testing, things like that. And that's the first entry point, the planning phase. The second entry point is where they are already well advanced, they already have a clinical candidate, say, and they just really need to get to the point where they can do the IND-enabling studies, do GMP manufacturing, and file an IND before they enter into first-human clinical trials. That could be a second entry point. And that enters that blue bar where we can, in addition to the funding, also then make these contract resources that is part of the network available to facilitate that activity. And that could include whatever is needed for that particular applicant to get to the IND. It could be pharmacology, it could be regulatory, it could be manufacturing, or all of the above. And then after the IND is filed with the FDA, that could be a third entry point. And this is the third entry point that we are building as we speak. There will be a mechanism by the middle of next year where applicants who graduated from these preclinical programs can enter as seamlessly as possible into the clinic, or if an applicant already has a cleared IND and a GMP manufactured drug, they could enter the clinic directly. So that is still under construction, and I can answer any questions about that later. So this is a very new program. We only launched this at the end of last year, November last year, and at that time we published this paper in Nature Biotechnology, and this was our first attempt to reach out to the communities to create awareness for this program. So next slide, please. So in terms of the goals or the mission of this urgent program, we hope to provide these resources and funding for the scientific community to develop gene-targeted therapies from the bench to the bedside for these ultra-rare patient populations. And by doing so, we hope to accelerate the advancement of these discoveries from bench to bedside, and at the same time provide these resources which may in many times be lacking and the expertise to take these discoveries into the clinic. And we will also provide an external consulting board for each project that will oversee and monitor the progress of the project and really guide it to make sure that it's really set for success. And by doing so, deliver these therapeutics to these unmet need patients. Typically, these patient populations cannot rely on industry being interested in their particular disease. So this is what we hope this urgent network can fulfill. There's a certain void, and we hope that this network can fill that void. And then last but not least, standardize and harmonize these practices. Now, this is easier said than done, but ultimately over the years, we hope to accumulate the data generated by these projects and disseminate it to later projects coming in, so that we don't have a situation where each project is kind of ad hoc, that it's kind of a unique that it's an individual project, that we can learn from our past experiences, past failures, and past successes, and pass that on to later projects as they enter the network. Next slide. So just a quick word on the scope. In the US, the definition for a rare disease is 200,000, but for the ultra-rare disease population, it affects substantially fewer people, less than 6,000 in the US. And this equates to approximately 1 in 50,000 people. So the modalities that could be eligible for the urgent network include, but not limited to, for example, oligonucleotide-based approaches, and I'm thinking here about ASOs, for example, or siRNAs, viral-based vectors, such as AAV or lentivirus, genome editing, such as CRISPR-Cas, and then any other gene-based therapeutic approaches that may include even small molecules like RNA splicing molecules, small molecules, could also be within scope. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a summary of the 2 entry points I referred to earlier. The current funding opportunities. The first one is PreAPplication 22028. This is called an EXA-1 mechanism. This is only the Network Resource Access Program. And I'll say a little bit more about that later. It's an earlier stage program where you can still do some optimization work, but it's only a resource access program. PAR 22030, that's the UL1 version. It's a cooperative agreement. And under that funding agreement, we can offer funding as well as contract resources. And so hopefully by next year, there will be a third one added here, which will be the third entry point, and that is the direct access into a clinic for the first in human clinical trial testing. Next slide. This is kind of going back to that earlier diagram, but linking the grant mechanisms to the different phases or the different project entry points. The EXA-1, this is the Resource Access Program, PAR 22028. That is the program where you can have access to these contract resources and the subject matter experts that can help you at this planning stage, the earlier planning stages, where we can help you to define a regulatory strategy or do a gap analysis or figure out what is needed to take your therapy from where you are today to the next step. The later stage entry point is for the U1. This is the PAR 22030. This is where we offer the funding as well as the contract resources. And this is a much later stage program. You should already have a substantial body of proof of concept data and a nominated clinical candidate. And that is where you can just do the IND enabling studies and file the IND. So that's the UL1. The third entry point after the IND is filed is called OT. It's one of the acronyms at NIH. It stands for other transaction. The best way to remember that is that it's not a grant and it's not a contract. It's a very flexible mechanism that we have in the federal government to quickly fund a project. So what we hope to do here is that once a project enters the point where they file the IND and the IND clears, we can quickly transition over into the clinic and fund the clinical trial through this OT mechanism. It doesn't exist yet. We are building this system right now, and we hope to launch that by the middle of next year. I should just quickly add that the overarching governance of the network is through an external consulting board. These are people, seasoned veterans from industry, academia, nonprofits who volunteer their time to help us to guide these projects and advise us, NINDS, as well as the PI on best practices to move the project forward. There is also a centralized data management system. I alluded to that earlier, and that is where we hope to capture data both preclinically and clinically, and then hope to make it available for later projects as they come in, so that we can harmonize some of these practices and SOPs and methods, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel each time we do another AAV or another ASO. So that is the thinking behind that. Next slide. Again, it's a kind of a table just summarizing the two funding opportunity announcements with some of the parameters with each. The EXO1 as the first mechanism, that's the resource access program. The support period could be up to 3 years. We do expect milestones to be established for this, and we do this in conjunction with the PI and the subject matter experts, as well as the NIH staff who are involved. The budget is not applicable in this sense because there are no funds awarded. It's only a resource access program. In terms of intellectual property, the awardee institution retains their assignment of the intellectual property. And any work done by one of the NIH contractors will default back to the institution, to the awarding institution. The UL1, notable differences there. It's a cooperative agreement, also up to 3 years, and milestones, just like the EXO1, also established with the PI, NIH staff, and the subject matter experts. As far as the budget is concerned, it's not limited. What that really means, it's not implying that it's a blank check, but what it doesn't mean is that the budget should match the scope and the nature of the work. Now, we realize this is late stage preclinical work. It involves large animal models, it involves GMP manufacturing, and these activities are known to be very, very expensive. So we are very much aware of that. But what we are asking for is that the budget should match the scope of the work and the nature of the work. Intellectual property, the same provisions apply as the EXO1. The awarding institution retains all IP. Next step, and next slide, please. Just a quick word on some of the entry requirements, and this only apply. I'm only focusing now on the UL1 version, the PAR 22030. Some of the key entry requirements requirements there to keep in mind is that the proof of concept data should establish the feasibility and the rationale for the candidate use with the effective dose range already established. The PI should have identified the gene-based or transcript-directed therapeutic clinical candidate. In other words, most, if not all, of the optimization work should have been done already by the time that you enter the program. A third requirement is that the PI should have already had some pre-IND discussions with the FDA. And the thinking behind that is really just, we don't want any surprises for us or for you. We don't want to pay these expensive manufacturing or animal testing and then come to the point where we want to file the IND and we realize, we are completely out of sync with what FDA would have expected. So we want to see that pre-IND meeting and consensus reached with the FDA before we start funding these expensive IND enabling studies. And then finally, there should also be a well-articulated idea of what that future clinical trial should look like, so that any planning activities that can be done before the IND is filed can be incorporated as part of the project, so that we can move seamlessly and quickly from IND filing to first-in-human clinical trials. Next slide, sorry. Yeah, so like I've said before, this is a late-stage non-clinical development program, and what it really involves is that applications proposing plans for non-clinical development can do so in parallel with clinical planning activities, and this may include, but it's not limited to, manufacturing, such as cGMP manufacturing, qualification or validation of any assays needed for the IND enabling studies, or an assay needed, like, for example, a potency assay that could be used for in clinical testing. And then the IND enabling efficacy and safety toxicology studies, obviously, assessment of any off-target effects, evaluation of any pharmacodynamic or target engagement biomarkers could also be included as part of the scope. Completion of all clinical trial planning activities, and that could vary from project to project. And then finally, and ultimately, the preparation and submission of the IND package to FDA. Next slide. Just a brief word on the cooperative agreement nature of these funding opportunity announcement. The structure is such that a successful project entering the network will be required to form what we call a multidisciplinary project team, or an MPT for short. And that is just really where we, the PI and any member of the PI's team, together with our subject matter experts, with the contractors, will form this team to monitor and manage the project. And the MPT will, like I've just said, will include these individuals, and it's going to be different for each project depending on what the needs are for that particular project. And the objective here is really for the MPT to establish this overall strategy and manage the project from start to finish. Next slide. This is kind of a summary slide, just general information. So we have the two funding opportunity announcements available right now, the EXA1 PAR22028 and the UL1, the Cooperative Agreement. This is the one where you have the funding as well as the contract resources, PAR22030. The next receipt date for the UL1 is coming up in June, and then after that in October. We have 3 receipt dates actually every year. We just passed the February one, and then next year there will be a February, a June, and an October receipt date for the UL1, and that will continue going forward. For the EXA1, we have rolling application, so there's not a set date to submit your application. It's received on a rolling basis in blocks of time. So if you submit it, we'll immediately be aware of it and start some action to review it and to let you know whether or not you were successful with your application. Next slide. This is a very important slide, I think, for you to remember. It's the urgent website with a lot of additional information. I've really just touched on a few things right now. We update this website quite frequently. So please take a look at it. There's a lot of good information for you to take note of. Next slide. As part of the website, we also have this pre-application form that you can download. So if you go back now and you look at the funding opportunity announcements and the website, and after careful consideration, you think that this is something you are interested in and something you want to pursue further, you can download this form and fill it out. It's just a page or two long, where you can just provide us with some basic preliminary information about your disease that you are working on, your clinical candidate or your modality that you're working on, some ideas about your specific aims, scope of your study, and then you can submit that to us. And that is really how you communicate with us. This is the first point where we can start looking at your particular project and advise you and make a determination if we think it's a good fit to the urgent network. And if it's not, we can always point you in another direction where you may be a better fit. So next slide. This is the last slide. So these are the program contacts. It's myself and Adisa. We also have a mailbox. You can submit questions to the mailbox, but ideally just contact me and Adisa directly, and we can answer any questions you have, or we can set up a call. So I believe this is the last slide. And after this, we can just, if you have any questions, we can use the remainder of the time to answer any questions.
Absolutely. We do have a couple of questions from the participants. So the first question states, where can we find whether a condition matches the ultra-rare qualifications?
Well, it's something this is something I think that you will have, the applicant will have, that's the responsibility of the applicant, right? You have to research your particular condition and determine the prevalence of that particular disease or variant, and see if it fits into that number, if it's 1 in 50,000. So I would say the best way to do that is to do that research yourself.
Absolutely, thank you. The second question is, how does urgent differentiate from the Bespoke Gene Therapy Consortium? Are there aligned goals between these two groups? Will they share data/knowledge with each other?
Yeah. So the Bespoke Gene Therapy Consortium is still being launched. In fact, I'm part of that effort as well. And it's still being launched. So there are notable differences, and the urgent network is only for neurological and neuromuscular diseases. The Bespoke Gene Therapy Consortium could be for any disease, group. So that would be the biggest difference. There are some overlap. We can share a lot of data. I think that was the second part of the question, and this is where the data capture comes in. Is that we hope to capture our own data and also share it with other consortiums, and that they will do the same for us, so that we don't reinvent the wheel each time. Next question.
Thank you for that. So the next question is, when is the announcement of the first cycle UO1 recipient? I'm curious about the demographics of academic researchers receiving this grant. Example, institution researchers that are historically focused on gene therapy research or more.
What was the first part of that question?
Sorry, let me repeat that. When is the announcement of the first cycle for the UO1 recipient?
The first cycle. We had a first receipt date in December. We had a second receipt date in February, just this past February, and the next one is coming up in June. I'm not sure I understand the question. And these are ongoing cycles for the UO1. Like I said, there are 3 receipt dates every year. If I'm not answering this person's question, please contact me directly and I will be happy to see if I can do a better job of answering your question.
Absolutely. And the next question is there a database for the ultra-rare diseases?
We at the Urgent Network do not have such a database. I would advise this person to contact other institutions, other non-profits, organizations such as NORD could be another option to consider. I'm sure there must be various databases out there. So it's dependent on your particular disease and what your needs are. So I would again advise this person to go out and look for a database that could be the closest to your particular disease.
Absolutely. The next question states, what funding mechanisms are recommended for early stage non-clinical development?
And early stage, that's a vague term, right? For the Urgent Network, the EXA1 is the one for the earlier stage projects. This is where you could have 1 or more leads. You still have a substantial amount of optimization work needs to be done. You still need to do dose ranging studies, for example. So the EXA1 would be the most obvious entry point for you if this is where you are at right now. The UO1 is much later. You should already have your nominated clinical candidate. A lot of the things should already be established. You should already have that pre-IND meeting with the FDA and just really do the IND enabling studies. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah. The next question states, are the ultra-rare diseases, should the ultra-rare diseases be neurologically related to qualify for urgent?
There has to be a neurological aspect to that particular disease, right? There has to be a clinical manifestation, a clinical neurological manifestation of that particular disease. Then it would be eligible for this program.
Great.
And it also, like I said earlier, the neuromuscular diseases are also within the scope of urgent.
Absolutely. The next question asks, does the EXA1 cover the cost of network resources for the awardee, or would the awardee be responsible for the cost of taping into network contracts?
These contracts are NINDS contracts, so we pay the maintenance of the contracts and we pay for all the activities executed by the contractors. And the services are rendered for the applicant. So the applicant benefits by receiving these services without having to pay for it. The NINDS Urgent Network pays for the contractors to perform these activities on behalf of the applicant. Again, the devil is in the details. If you have a specific example in mind, contact me and we can discuss it.
Absolutely. The next question states, when will the grantees be announced for the December cycle?
Okay, yeah, the December cycle, we received only 2 applications. Those applications went to review. A decision was made not to fund them because of some deficiencies, some review considerations or concerns. So there was no formal announcement because there wasn't a decision to fund any of those projects.
Absolutely. The next question states, can the PD be a disease foundation?
Yes, answer is yes.
And the next question states, if we're looking to apply for a UO1 this year, should we include clinical trial cost or should we wait for the OT program to launch?
I will try to answer that in general terms. Like I said, it's best to discuss that with your particular case in front of me. Any clinical trial planning activities could be funded under the U1 as part of the U01. It is only the actual cost associated with the clinical trial itself that will be paid for by the OT mechanism, and that's only available next year, by the middle of next year. But anything prior to IND filing and any clinical trial planning related activities can be funded now under the UO1 as part of that non-clinical package.
Absolutely. The next question states, when will the first awardees be announced or notified?
Maybe I should just try to clarify how that process works. So let's assume somebody applies to the UO1, and there are 3 receipt days, like I've mentioned before. A couple of weeks or months after receipt of that application, it goes to a scientific review panel, a special emphasis panel. They review that and they score that. So, and then based on the score, as well as any of the concerns raised, NINDS leadership makes a decision whether or not to fund that particular project. So far, we haven't funded any because of reviewer concerns. The way that it would work for a successful application is that it will go to review, they will score well, there will be minimal concerns, and then we will release a notice of award to the grantee to indicate that our intention to fund the project. It's at that point in time then that also that we will form that MPT, that multidisciplinary project team with the grantee organization to launch the project. And at that point in time, there will be an announcement either on our website or some other public domain website of the funding of that particular project. So it's fairly complicated and involved. It's not like some of these foundations or nonprofits who decide to fund the project and then put it up on their website. We follow NIH protocols.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. We do have a couple more questions. And the next one asks, do applicants need a pre-IND for the EXO-1 opportunity?
No. No, the answer there is no. You don't need a pre-IND meeting with FDA for the EXO-1 mechanism. It's an earlier stage program where you can enter if you have 1 or more leads, you still need to do a substantial amount of optimization work, and you need access to subject matter experts. And it's at that point in time then we can help you with the planning that I mentioned in my talk. The planning aspects that can roll over into actual execution of some of those planning activities identified, like manufacturing of the vector or animal studies or development of an assay or whatever was identified in the planning stage as something that was needed.
Thank you. And the next question, I'm not sure if it's understandable, but you will let me know. Does EXO-1 change ESI status?
You will have to repeat that. Does the EXO-1
change ESI status?
My quick answer there would be no, it shouldn't, because there's no actual funding. There's no funding going from NIH to the grantee. There's only access to the resources. So my answer there would be no, it doesn't.
Absolutely. The next question does, as the EXO-1 does not award research funds, does the Urgent Network have plans to fund the work done in an EXO-1?
Not at the moment. The UO1 mechanism is the only way to get actual funding as well as contract resources. But that's a later stage program. At the moment, we are a little bit reluctant to change it as is. It's still early days for us. We want to see what works and what doesn't. So no, there is no plan to change the X1 at this point in time. It may change later.
Absolutely. And the next question states, will the unsuccessful UO1 applicants have opportunity to reapply/resubmit? It was very surprising. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, they may resubmit.
Great. That's all the questions that we have for today. Is there any more questions that anyone would like to ask?
Well, if not, then all I can say is thank you so much for your interest in the program. Please take a look at all these resources that I mentioned, the website, the PARs, and if you think you are interested, please don't hesitate to contact them. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Like Chris said, please don't hesitate to send him an email so you can set up a meeting with him and I to talk more about your future project.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.